Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and Gamefound over the next week. If you're new here, we do this every single week going over all the upcoming campaigns, so if you do want to stay up to date, this is definitely the place to be. But before we get started, I do like to go over some news and announcements that I just found out about over the past week, and I do got a couple for you this week, with the first one being a new Assassin's Creed game that was just announced. And unlike a lot of the previous ones, this one is actually going to be a competitive game, and this one's being released by Mantic Games, and I think this is their first time jumping into this franchise, but they have done a bunch of other franchises already, and they do have a ton of games under their belt. I don't have a launch date for this one yet, and there's not too much more info on the gameplay, but it looks like this one's going to be taking you through multiple eras and the different locations that have been covered in the video game series. So if you are a fan of the series and you want to check this one out, you can follow along with the campaign now, but I will cover it in a lot more detail during the week of its launch, so feel free to subscribe down below. And we do have another game announced that is based on a video game franchise, and this is Clash of Clans, which I believe is just a mobile game. I've never actually played this one, but this one still caught my eye, but for a completely different reason, and that's because this one is actually co-designed by Eric Lang, who does fantastic work. He created Blood Rage as well as Rising Sun and a ton of other really popular games, even Cthulhu Death May Die, which is my favorite co-op game of all time, so he does fantastic work. I'm sure this will be no exception, and if you're a fan of the franchise or if you're a fan of his previous designs, this one will be launching in 17 days, which puts it on the 27th. If this looks interesting to you, definitely subscribe because I will cover it in a lot more detail during the week of its launch, which is really soon. And if you do like these sorts of videos, definitely go ahead and check out Alex over at Boardgame Co. as well, because him and I do work together keeping track of these upcoming campaigns. I put out these videos every single week, but if you do want to see a bit more into the future, Alex puts out a video at the start of the month, and he goes over the heavy hitters for that month. Of course, he offers a ton more content as well, going into all sorts of reviews and playthroughs and commentary on the industry. So he has a ton of really great content covering a wide variety of areas, all related to board games. Definitely check him out if you haven't already, and I'll have him linked in the description below, and be sure to subscribe if you do like his content. I also like to give a quick mention to Zilla Blitz because Alex and I do not cover the historical war games in as much detail, which is a whole subgenre of its own, and it has multiple crowdfunding platforms that I just don't look at, but Zilla Blitz does, and he also puts out a video each month going over the upcoming war games. So if you do want the most comprehensive coverage, or if this is just a genre that you also want to know about, I will have a link to his channel down below as well, and you can subscribe if you do like his content. And that's everything I got for an intro, and hopefully the audio sounds okay because I have completely torn apart this basement. I've ripped the ceiling down, I've ripped off the walls, I'm about to rip out the carpet, all of which I have conveniently hidden from the camera so I can at least pretend to live in a civilized home right now. Everything appears to be holding up and all the right lights are flashing green here, so I think we're good to start jumping into some campaigns, so let's check them out. And the first campaign we have launches on May 12th, and this one is called River Rats. This one's a cooperative poker style game where players are going to be going up against the River Rats, trying to beat their poker hand each and every round, and the first team that loses 5 times is going to be the loser of the game. Each round in this game starts by first creating the River Rats hand of cards, and the way that this works is that you're going to be drawing 5 cards face up and then 2 cards face down, and then you're also going to be drawing the actual River Rat that you're going to be going up against, which is going to reveal some sort of ability for the River Rat that adds an additional complication and variety to each of the rounds. And then a Joker card also gets drawn, which kind of acts as an objective that players can try to achieve, and it's going to have some sort of hand outlined on that card. And if you're able to get that hand by the end of the round, then that becomes a usable card that you can use in following rounds. Something that's really neat about this game is that each of the suits are going to be associated with a different type of animal, and each of these types of animals are going to have different special abilities of a certain category. This makes the cards dual use, and players will be trying to take advantage of these abilities and the cards themselves in order to try and create their own collective hand, with the goal of trying to defeat the River Rat's hand, but then also trying to complete that Joker objective card if it is possible to do so. The way that players do this is by taking turns performing one of 2 possible actions on their turn. These actions are going to allow you to manipulate the cards in your hand in a variety of ways in order to try and tip the scales in your favor. The first and most common action players are going to be taking is to draw and play a card. Each player is going to be maintaining a hand of 3 cards that is only visible to them, but what's neat about these cards is that you can either draw them from the deck or you can draw them from the shared market. You'll then be able to pick one of those cards and play it into your team's shared hand, and then you can perform the action associated with that card's suit. Like I said, each suit represents a different faction with their own special abilities, but also each player is going to be associated with the suit as well, and if you played the suit that matches your character, then you can instead use your own personal ability. The other option that you have on your turn is one that you're not going to be using too often because it is instead to use one of your previously acquired Joker cards, and like I said, you won't have any one of those in the first round because you first need to unlock them, but if you do unlock one in the future, you can use an action to play it into your hand and it can just act as a wild, operating as any card that you need. Turns just continue like this until you reach a hand of 5 cards, and then you're going to be resolving the hands to see which of the teams have won. You'll be comparing your hand of cards against the River Rat's best hand of 5 cards, and then the losing team is going to be gaining a deck card which signifies their loss. The first team that gets 5 of these is going to be the loser of the game, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below, and of course you can follow along to get notified once this one launches. Also on the 13th we have Geomandering, which is a 2-player print and play roll and write game, and I do want to mention with this one that the base game is offered for free on their campaign, so if you do want to get a free game and try this one out, you can go ahead and check out the campaign for that. But I should also mention that this was submitted right before me filming this, so I haven't had any chance to look into this one. It says here that this one's a dueling dice drafting game of mischief and territorial manipulation, and players are rival wizards trying to reshape the political landscape, and you're going to be conjuring rivers, founding cities, and burning areas in order to maximize your influence. Some dice are going to get rolled each round, and then players are going to be taking turns drafting those dice in order to take actions on their own personal tableau, which will allow them to power up different spells and abilities, or use those dice and abilities to take control of different regions on the shared map. Like I said, I just found out about this one right now, so I don't have any information prepared for this one, but if you like the way that the game sounds and if you like what I'm sharing on the screen here, definitely feel free to go ahead and check out the campaign yourself and see what this new expansion is going to be adding into the game. And like I said, they are offering the base game for free, which is really awesome of them, so if you do just want to go and try out the game and see if you like it, that is definitely an easy option here. And if you do like it, definitely show them the support because the expansion here is only $6, and you can find a link to all of this in the description down below. And launching on May 13th, we have the Brightview Haunting. And this one's a asymmetrical one versus many horror game where one player is going to be playing as a demon that was unintentionally awakened, and then the rest of the players are going to be playing as exorcists, using their actions to try and send that demon back. Players are going to be exploring different areas and resolving different events while finding different ritualistic items and gear that you'll have to take advantage of to try and lock away the demon. The demon's known as the Whisperer, and it can corrupt and possibly possess the players if they're not careful, because the players will have to manage their corruption in a variety of ways, but if they gain too much of it, then the demon player can possess them as their vessel. What's really neat about this is that if and when it happens, it actually turns the game from a one versus many game into a team versus team game. But also on top of that, there are some ways that you can reverse a possession, making that transition from a one versus many into a team versus team game a more fluid two-way street that you can actually move back and forth into throughout the entirety of the game. If the players are able to weaken and defeat the demon, then they win the game, but if they are defeated before they're able to do so, then the demon wins the game and anyone that is currently possessed by the demon. I do have the link to the campaign, and I will have that in the description down below. And also on the 13th, we have Rewild South America, and this one's a game all about restoring the deforested or destroyed scrublands, wetlands, and rainforested areas in South America. Players are going to be doing this through tile placement and tableau building, and each player is going to have their own personal board in order to build out their terrain, and players are going to be collecting and spending different types of resources in order to put out terrain tiles of different types, which will then allow players to host animal cards that require those terrains. And of course, playing an animal can grant you with all sorts of different bonuses or ways to score victory points, and this is a game that just plays over alternating turns. On a player's turn, you're just going to be performing a single action, and the way that you take actions in this game is by using action cards. Each of these cards actually has 2 different effects that you can activate, and you're going to be choosing one of those 2 effects and then discarding that card, making it no longer accessible to you until you use the action card that allows you to put all your discarded cards back into your hand. The actions can allow you to do things like gain different types of resources or spend those resources in order to gain and place a terrain tile of the different terrain types. Place trees or additional tokens out on your terrain in order to upgrade it for additional benefits. Discard, manipulate, or gain animal cards from the shared market. Or like I said, return all your discarded action cards back into your hand. After you've taken your action, you can then optionally place animal cards into your tableau, which offer a bunch of different icons and scoring objectives that will multiply by those different icons or the different terrain types or different animal types that you have collected so far. You'll then be able to draw more of these from the shared market if you do meet the requirements to draw that card. The game continues like this until the player either completely fills up their terrain board with tiles, or if they filled up all the slots for their animal cards. At that point, all the players are going to be adding up their victory points, and the player with the most is the winner of the game, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. Also on the 13th, we have ZooJourn, and this one is a competitive family weight game where players are going to be trying to compete to be the first to gain 12 points. And the way that this game works is that players are going to be navigating a shared board, traveling across the different continents in order to discover different animals, with each of the animals representing a letter in the alphabet. This means that there's 26 different animals, and players will be traveling to the different locations with the goal to try and collect sequential letters. If you're able to collect 3 or more, there are specific areas out on the board that you can visit in order to deliver that set of animals, and whenever you do that, you're going to be scoring for the animals that you've collected, with each of them having a different victory point amount associated with them. As players are doing all this, there's also going to be different event and challenge cards drawn that can create different challenges between the players, and while players are doing all this, there's also going to be a villain meeple that's periodically moving around the different regions on the board, blocking out that entire region while it is in that area. Like I said, this one is designed to be a family game, which makes it really easy to teach and play, and if you do want to check it out, I will have it linked down below. Also on the 13th, we have a Calamity of Witches, and this one's a semi-cooperative trick-taking game where each player is going to be part of their own witch house represented by one of the suits. The goal is to win as many cards of your suit as possible, and if you are able to do that, then you might win the game. And the reason you only might win the game is where that semi-cooperative aspect comes into play, because even though there's a bunch of different witch houses, being a witch does still mean being part of a sisterhood, and you need each of those different houses to have a certain amount of members in order for anyone to win. If any one player doesn't meet that threshold, then all the players lose the game, which means that you do want your opponents to at least win some tricks, but there will be a little bit of push and pull when you're deciding which tricks you might want to give up, and when and how early you might want to do that, because you don't want to give them too much opportunity to run away with it, because if everyone does meet the threshold, it's only the player that has the most cards of their suit that is the winner of the game. I believe the game does follow normal trick-taking rules, where the highest card of the led suit is going to be winning that trick, but the game does also throw in a neat little twist where the player who plays the lowest value card will be able to activate a special power. If that sounds interesting to you and you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked in the description down below. This next one's also launching on the 13th, and it's the next campaign coming from Allplay, and it's also one that I just found out about, so I don't have a whole lot of info on it. But that's also not only my fault, because this one is the top secret-ish games, which I think means that they will be telling you what the other games are before the campaign ends, but right now they're just showing you 4 of them. And what this campaign is a little bit different than most of the other campaigns that we've seen here, because this one's actually going to be bringing their retail games onto Kickstarter, and because they're doing this in a bundle, it allows them to give a really nice discount, knocking $65 off of the total MSRP. The bundle is going to consist of 9 games and 3 mini expansions, and they're going to be shipping over 3 different waves in June, October, and January. And the games revealed so far are Alibis, High Rise, Wordsy, and Pinatas. Haven't played these ones yet, but I did show up to a game night in the middle of High Rise, and everyone there seemed to really like it. If you want to learn more about these games that have been announced so far, High Rise and Wordsy do have quite a lot of content and coverage on YouTube that you can go check out from other content creators, but Alibis and Pinatas are brand new games into the mix, so there's not any footage out for those just yet, but I'm sure there will be a bunch more info on the campaign page once it goes live, and of course, along with that, I'm sure they will start revealing some of these other games that you can check out as well. If you're interested in that, you can go ahead and check out the campaign, and I will have that linked down below. These next couple games I have covered in the past, but this first one here I've actually mentioned over the last few weeks, so I'm not going to go into this one in too much more detail, but that is Titan Zero. You can go ahead and check it out if you want to learn more. And the other one is a new campaign for Morphosis, as well as the Order of the Vampire. And although I did cover these in the past, that was for their original campaign years ago, so this new campaign is new information to me. I'm just going to go ahead and assume that my vampire Hunters footage was pretty rough because I did do it in the early days of the channel, but Morphosis was a game that I do remember covering, and I remember being very interested in this one. I think it looked like a lot of fun. Hopefully the footage for that one is decent because I'll at least roll that one for you, and if it does look interesting to you, of course you can go ahead and check out the campaign, and I will have that linked below. And this is a cooperative game where players are a crew assigned to a research station. It just so happens that the particular station you're working at is about to get attacked by aliens. Players will be working together to build makeshift weapons to fight off the insect horde. You'll also be accessing the station's computer in order to lock off certain areas of the facility, turn on different security measures, and prevent certain system failures. This game does feature some really nice miniatures for both the enemies and the players, and if you like cooperative survival board games, this will definitely be one that you want to check out. And also launching on May 13th, we have the 3 Magi, and this one's a competitive game where players are going to be using worker movement in order to move across a desert, take various actions depending on the locations that they land on. The different actions that you'll find on these locations can do things like allow you to draw cards from different resource decks, play cards from your hand, or allow you to move discs on your constellation board, earning you bonuses for the areas that you move over. Each of the resource decks are limited to certain resources, so if you know there is something that you want, you're going to be trying to draw from that specific deck, although it doesn't guarantee you that you will get that resource. If you get the resources that you need to craft the different items out on display at the top of the board, then you can trade in those resources to claim those tokens for victory points. But like many games, this is a game that plays over a series of turns, and on your turn you'll just be able to move one of your camels to a new location. What's really cool about this is, like I said, all the camels do begin on the left-hand side of the board, and whenever you move a camel, it can only move to one of the adjacent locations next to one of your existing camels. This means that most of the time you're going to want to move the camel that is furthest behind so that you're slowly making your way across the board while keeping your camels intact, and also taking advantage of those different action locations along the way. As I mentioned, most of these actions do allow you to either pick up a resource card or play a resource card, but something that's important to know about these cards is that they are multi-use. You can use them for crafting, like I mentioned before, by exchanging those resources for the different objective tokens that are at the top of the board, or instead you can play it for the bonus that's outlined at the bottom of the card. Some of those will grant you with instant actions similar to those that you can find out on the desert board, like moving your token around on your constellation board and gaining the bonus from that, or by grabbing one of these merchant cards that are available from the display. These are really nice because they can grant you with bonuses and abilities they can take advantage of throughout the game, but some of the other bonuses on these resource cards could actually present different set collection opportunities that will allow you to score more victory points at the end of the game, depending on which type of cards you've played in your tableau and the sets that you're able to create and how they align with the resource card's objective. But the turns continue like this, with players earning victory points from completing those objectives on any resource cards that they've played into their tableau, and then also gaining victory points from any of those items that they're able to craft at the top of the board, with more coming out as those are completed. Once a player reaches the opposite end of the board, that's going to be triggering the end of the game, and then the player with the most victory points at that time wins, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked in the description down below. And also on the 13th, we have Roblins, which is a head-to-head tactical tile placement game where you're going to be trying to manipulate the board and the terrain in your favor, and then also place units out there to defend your territories and attack your opponents. On a player's turn, they're going to be drawing their hand from any combination of the 3 decks. There is the terrain deck, which is going to grant you with terrain tiles that you can place out on the play area in order to manipulate your region and connect over to your opponents. There's the units deck, which is full of a bunch of different goblins with different combat stats. Then there's the special units deck, which also provides players with a bunch of different goblin units, but these ones will also have some sort of special effect or ability associated with them. Once you draw your tiles, you can then do 2 things with them. You can either purchase them in order to put them into play, or you can discard them in order to trade them in for gold. Putting terrain tiles into play allows you to have more control over the combat area, and the different terrain types do have some different effects and could be used to cause additional damage to your opponent. When you put units into play, you can either put them into a defensive or attack position, depending on what you want to use them for. But at the end of your turn, you always have the option to attack, and whenever you do this, you're going to be selecting which units you're going to be attacking with and which path you're going to take to your opponent's base. But then your units are first going to be taking damage based on the terrain they move through and any of the enemy defenses. Any units that are able to survive this are going to be making it to your opponent's base and then stealing gold based on their carrying capacity. And that brings you to the end of your turn, where you still do have one more final action that you can take, but this one is optional. and that's to draw additional gold from your own gold reserves, which you can then use in your future turn to buy more and more powerful units. But keep in mind that that gold does also operate as your health, so if you're doing this, it is a little bit of a push your luck mechanism, where drawing that does help you, but it also comes at a cost. You just want to make sure that the benefit does outweigh the cost. But the game continues like this until one player's gold is depleted, and then the other player is the winner, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. And launching on the 15th, we have Ascendia Seasons of Thargos, and this one's a competitive game where players are going to be playing as asymmetrical heroes with different stats and starting gear. And players are going to be exploring the land, fighting and taming different wild beasts, making different discoveries, and collecting resources in order to build up their stats and hopefully become the next Lord of Ascendia. This is a game that does play over a series of rounds, and players will be playing on this shared board here, but every single round, the first thing you're going to be doing is drawing a card in order to reveal which tile on the board is going to be flipped over to its barren side, which essentially removes it from the game, making it no longer produce the resources that it would normally produce. This does happen every single round, so as the game goes on, players do have less and less tiles to choose from, and this also does act as an endgame mechanism, where if all the tiles have been depleted, then that's going to be triggering the end of the game, and if there's no winner by that point, then all the players lose. But until then, players are going to be taking turns performing 2 actions on their turn, and you can use an action to move to an adjacent location, but any time that you do that, you will be drawing an encounter card, and these could have those friendly or aggressive animals, and depending on what you run into, you'll have some different options with how you want to handle that. But you could also draw bandits to fight, or bad weather cards, which can block off sections of the board. Each of the tiles can also have these different question mark tokens on them, and you can use an action in order to explore those different tokens, which can gain you all sorts of different resources or benefits, or trigger different effects to occur. If you're on the town, you can buy, sell, or upgrade your items, but if you're on any other tile, you can perform a forage action in order to roll a die and perform a skill check, and then depending on how well you do, you're going to be gaining some amount of resources based on what that tile produces. If there's enemies nearby, you can also use actions to fight, which will allow you to gain different resources, or renown if you are able to win the battle. And when you do choose to fight, you're going to be resolving this through dice rolling, where you're going to be rolling a die and then adding the results to your combat stat. The enemy also rolls a die, and you're going to be comparing those values to determine the outcome of the battle. One thing to note about combat in this game is that it can be quite challenging, and if there are other players in your area, then they can also choose to help you in that battle, and they can also gain benefits from that. But anytime that you do roll a die, there's always a chance that you'll roll the Guardian face, and that is not normally a good thing, because anytime that you roll the Guardian, it's going to instantly lose whatever action you are performing, and then it's also going to spawn a Guardian out on the board, which is basically another enemy for players to fight. It's not all bad, because like I said, you do gain renown and resources when you do fight and win battles, and the renown is really good because it is a useful resource that can help you win the game, because in order to win the game, you need to visit this tile in the center of the board, which you can do at any time in the game, but you're going to have to perform a skill check there, and it's a very challenging one. And if you do have renown saved up, you can spend it at that point in order to increase the value of your skill check. The catch here is that if you don't succeed, then all the renown that you spent in order to upgrade your roll is then going to be lost. So this does involve a little bit of push your luck, where you do want to do it early enough so that someone else doesn't beat you to it, but you don't want to do it too early where you're not quite prepared. As soon as a player is able to do this successfully, then they become the new Lord of Ascendia and they win the game. But like I said, if no player is able to do it before all the tiles flip over to their barren side, then all the players lose, and I doubt that's very good news for the city of Ascendia. As always, if this one does look interesting to you, I will have it linked down below. And also launching on May 15th, we have BONESWAY Luminis Refuge, and this one's a cooperative miniature adventure where players are going to be playing as a squad of units facing their first mission in a dystopian future. This is a game that's played over multiple chapters and scenarios, but what's really cool about how the scenarios work in this game is that players will be earning victory points throughout the scenario, but the outcome of the scenario and the rewards that you get are determined by the victory points that you've earned. This means that there are multiple paths to explore, and even if you play the same scenario over again, you could get a different outcome. Another thing that I really like here is the different maps and areas that you're going to be exploring across these chapters are all going to be provided through multiple spiral-bound books, which does make setup and teardown really, really easy. But like I said, players are going to be playing as different upgradable characters with different strengths and abilities, and they're going to be taking turns spending their action points in order to perform actions, but each action can only be used once per turn. The different actions available to you are to move, which will allow you to move up to your movement points, to run, which essentially allows you to move a second time since you can only use each action once, equip or exchange gear with other players, interact with different points of interest out on the board, and this one's really interesting because you can interact with different objects or you can interact with different NPCs. If you're interacting with an object, you're just going to be flipping its associated card, which will often reveal different options or skill checks that you'll have to challenge in order to gain some sort of benefit. And if you're interacting with an NPC, then you're going to be pulling up their dialogue options in the dialogue book, and this can have a whole bunch of different outcomes as well, and everyone might not be friendly. If that's the case, you can also use actions to attack enemies, and whenever you go into an attack phase, you're going to be drawing every enemy and player token from a bag, and this is going to be randomly setting up the initiative order. Players will then be using their actions to resolve the battle using dice rolling, incorporating their different gear and stats in order to augment their rolls, and the enemies will be attacking back through the draw of a card, which may also require a skill check from the players. There's also an event deck that can be drawn at different points in the game, and this is going to have a variety of effects on all the players or the game itself. But another thing that I'm seeing repeated in this campaign that I really like is the mention of something known as clues, and these are going to be offered in a variety of ways throughout the game. And the reason that I really like seeing this here is because I personally have an issue with a lot of these narrative campaign games where you're presented with different options, but then you're pretty much just flipping a coin when you're deciding which one to pick, and you don't really have any idea what the outcome is going to be, and it just kind of feels very random a lot of the time. And I do want to mention that I haven't played this one, so I don't know how well or if they've solved this problem at all, but it does sound like they're taking steps in the right direction, at least for my tastes, because it sounds like these clues are going to be providing you with different information or items that you'll be able to use in order to make better decisions when you do run into those decision points. This is also a game that you can only get through this campaign, and they're saying that there's never going to be an opportunity to get this in the future, so if this does even look somewhat interesting to you, I do at least recommend checking it out. At the same time, a lot of campaigns have said that in the past, and if a game does become popular enough, it normally does show up again at some point, either with an expansion or some slight tweaks to justify another campaign. But if you're good with all that, or if you don't want to risk it, you can find a link to the campaign in the description down below. And also on the 15th, we have The Long Hours Till Dawn, and this one's a cooperative horror zombie survival board game, but what you might notice from looking at this one is that it doesn't look like your typical board game, and that's because this one's an electronic board game that's all designed to be played on the circuit board. That being said, I think this one still does a really good job of capturing that classic board game feel. To my knowledge, this is only the second board game of its kind, because the first and only time I've seen a game designed like this is when this same creator launched their first campaign, where they launched a game where you're trapped on a ship with a deadly alien and players are trying to escape, and just like this one, that one was also played on a circuit board, so this creator does have experience doing this. This one is a little different though, because like I said, this one does take place during a zombie apocalypse, but players are going to be working cooperatively to try and survive the night in an isolated farmhouse, and if players are able to do that before the zombies get to them first, then they have won the game. You might be wondering how you actually play on a board like this, and the answer to that is that we have all these different buttons at the bottom here, and those are all going to be relating to the different actions that you can perform. The game also makes really good use of using LEDs to light up the different sections of the board, and you might have noticed that the board is broken into a bunch of different locations, and these are all different locations that the players can go ahead and visit. This image here just has all the lights turned on to showcase them, but when you're actually playing, there's only going to be a few lit up at a time. The blue light represents a player in that room, whereas the red lights represent a zombie presence there, and the red light can intensify if there are more and more zombies showing up. But then we also have the white LEDs, which represent different doors and entry points, which can be blocked off with barricades. And then finally we have the green lights, which can represent locked doors or locked storage containers that players might be able to gain access to in order for some additional benefits or access to that room. And the board is equipped with a speaker in order to guide the players through their turns or play different sound effects depending on the actions or events that occur. The players will be taking their turns using the buttons to cycle through different move actions, search actions, drop or pick up items and materials, which they can also use to construct or remove barricades. And what I really like about this game is the interact option, because this is going to offer unique effects depending on which room you're in and what you've done so far. And players can make all sorts of different discoveries that can actually lead to 7 different endings, with some of these endings being more difficult to discover than others. In between the player's turn, the zombies will also have a turn as well, and they're going to be moving or attempting to break barricades, and if they are in range, they're going to be trying to attack the players. If the players are overrun or killed, then they're going to be losing the game, but if they make it through the night, then they're going to be resolving one of those 7 different endings, and they will win the game. And if you do want to check this one out and learn more about it, you can go ahead and find the campaign linked in the description down below, and there's also a really helpful video on the campaign page already that will take you through a few turns, show you how all the lights and sound effects and actions work when you actually play the game. And the last campaign we have launches on the 16th, and I couldn't find a whole lot of info on this one, but this one is going to be offering 3 different roll and write games that do all share a mechanism where you're going to be rolling dice at the start of a round, and then players are going to be drafting those dice and using them to take different actions. What's really neat about this is that it looks like you're going to be rolling the dice in this little component here that's broken up into a few different resources, and that's going to determine the types of resources that those dice can offer. Each of the games look like they're built on those same core mechanisms, but they do also have a rating here, which I believe is rating the weight of the game. The California roll and write is ranked as easy, whereas the Kansas roll and write is ranked just in between easy and medium. And then finally, the Texas roll and write is ranked as a medium. So it looks like they are building upon the mechanisms and introducing new ideas across each of these games. But if you want to see exactly how the games play and what the exact difference is between them, you'll have to check out the campaign, because that is all the information I have right now. You can find the link with the others in the description down below. And that's everything we got this week, but don't leave yet because we still do have a couple awesome giveaways. I'm just going to see what happens here first. Looks like we're going into overtime with a power play for Florida, so we'll see how that goes, but let's continue with the video and we'll come back to this. And the 2 giveaways we have are for a pledge for OQUO as well as MonToons Guardians of the Coral Isle. OQUO is a 2-player abstract strategy game where each player is going to have 4 different tokens that they're going to be moving around out on a grid. And the rules here are pretty simple because players are just going to be taking turns moving one of their tokens 1 space in any direction. And it's the first player that's able to move their tokens in such a way that they're able to create a square with the tokens representing the 4 corners. The first player that's able to do that wins the game. MonToons is very different than that because not only is this one a head-to-head arena battler, but it's also a roll and write arena battler, which I don't think I've ever seen before. But players are each going to be playing as different characters, and you're also going to have a token representing them out on the main board. And each of the characters that you're playing as can be upgraded in a variety of ways by using those roll and write actions to fill in different areas of your board, complete different objectives, and unlock new upgrades and powers. Of course, those actions can also be used in order to move around out on the arena and issue attacks to your opponent, and it's the player that depletes their opponent's health first that's going to be the winner of the game. Just like last week, I'm going to be running these 2 giveaways over on the Discord, so all you got to do to enter these ones is head over to the Discord in the description down below, check out the giveaways channel, and then click the emoji underneath that giveaway. Then that'll get drawn at the end of the week. If you're watching this early enough, we still haven't drawn the winners for the previous giveaway, so you can also enter in that one. And if you haven't checked out the Discord yet, we run giveaways here all the time, and your odds of winning on the Discord are really good because we don't get quite as many entries. But also the Discord provides a ton of value in itself because we track all the different games that we know of that are launching at any point in the future, and we do categorize them by what's launching this week and next week or in the following month or even sometime later in the year. It's free to join, and I do have all notifications turned off by default, so you don't have to worry about getting spammed with a bunch of different messages. That's everything I got for you this week, and it looks like there's still going to be a few minutes here before they kick off the overtime, so if you do want to know the outcome of this game, I'll have to leave you on the suspense. But as always, I really do appreciate you tuning in and checking out the channel. I hope there's something there that caught your interest, and I hope that your team wins the playoffs, especially if it's the Leafs or the Jets. But until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.